Of course, if you,
We will start. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first meeting of the 2024-25 school year. And I'll call this meeting to order at 4:02. Stand and join us. Our flag is there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to 1.2, adopting the agenda. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as posted.
And a second?
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Jerry?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And I also agree. Motion carries. Moving on to consent agenda. 2.1, consideration of approval of warrants and payroll for NU Humboldt. 2.2, consideration of approval of warrants batches 0715, 0724, 0730, 23, and 24. 23 again, 24, 2, 23, 24, and payroll for NUCS. 2.3, consideration of approval of minutes for the June 26th and June 27th board meetings. And 2.4, consideration of resignations, hires, leaves, and changes of assignments. Are there any questions or comments about any of these?
I came wanting to ask about the new hire CTE teacher, FFA advisor, but I am pleasantly surprised that individual is someone who I know.
Now, how do you guys know each other?
Well, Jerry owns some property down in some farmland, 20 acres behind his house, and one of my client farmers leases it.
Okay.
And we were growing organic quinoa there for a number of years. I was working for Lumber Family Farms, which is a big rice farming and food company in the valley, and they contracted with several growers over here to raise organic quinoa. And this is tenant. He farmed quinoa on this property. The company decided not to give any more contracts out, so that program is gone. Along with me.
But beyond that, we also had a fondness for a particular old style Volkswagen.
Yeah, Carmen Gianco.
Okay. Oh, say no more.
My very first car was exactly like this.
Okay.
It was color.
I thought you were gonna say you also had a fondness for the same beer.
I do you have any comments or questions? I do have one. It is about our minutes on 2.3 on the 26th. Jerry came late to that meeting and he's listed here as being present, but he doesn't actually start voting until 5.0, and maybe he came during the public hearings, but I think it should be noted because the first part of the voting,
He's
he's not
on-
listed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, we'll add that.
Jerry, do you remember where you came?
It was probably, I'd have to look at the agenda, but maybe item 4.
Okay,
I will look, because I think, I put timeframes on them.
That's
So
good.
sometime during,
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
We'll add that.
okay. Um,
So then when we adopt it with that change.
with that change. And hearing, no other questions or comments, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the correction that Rosemary pointed out.
And a second?
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, Jerry,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and I also agree. Motion carries. Moving on to 3.1, comments by the public. Under this item, the public is invited to address the board regarding items that are not on tonight's agenda. Please keep your comments concise, brief, and limited to 3 minutes. The board is not allowed under the law to take action on matters that are not on the agenda. Should comments from the public pertain to a charge or complaint against an employee of NU Humboldt or NU Siskiyou, the board encourages the speaker to utilize the school's written complaint procedures to pursue the matter. The public will have an opportunity to comment on all agenda items as those items are heard. Do we have any public comments?
Well, I will comment at this time. I'm not public, but Bill came so that we can introduce him to you, the board. And which I guess Jerry can actually do the introduction. They already know each other. But Bill is our new, as Jerry pointed out, our new CTE teacher and FFA advisor. So Kathy Sherler, you know, who was the FFA advisor this past year and started the club at our school, wanted Bill to be introduced tonight to the board. So here you are.
Be here.
Thank you.
To be on board.
Yeah.
The more I find out about this organization, the more I like it.
Well, that's
Oh, good.
That's better than the opposite.
I haven't tried a classroom out yet, but I did visit the ELC.
Good.
I need to see Sarah about getting the key,
Uh-huh.
the code.
Yeah. So Bill will be teaching a science class at ELC as well as being the FFA advisor.
you know, which content.
Well,
In that science room.
Oh, that science room? That's a big room.
Mhm.
well, Bill, I can speak for the rest of us, or certainly Rosemary and I, who are huge fans of FFA, and as one that was both my wife Carol and I closely associated with FFA for a very, very long time, back in our sheep days.
Right.
So forward to having you continue the program and make the inroads with the rest of the Del Norte section FFA chapters. I know we'll be in very good hands, and so I am so pleased to see that you're in that position.
We also share sheep days. And
Well, welcome aboard. Thank you for coming. And I'll just put it out there, don't feel compelled to stay through the whole meeting if you don't want to. You are more than welcome to, but you don't have to. So I'm just putting that out there.
kind of, in a sense, with my hat in hand, I didn't bring my hat, but, budget is, I mean, right now, our account is 0. And we need to start some bake sales soon to raise money. It takes I need to make my. A couple of ideas that I want to float. I think what would be a good deal that would be to have an FFA farm stand. That would be somewhere where there's good traffic and close by here. Where parents can shop and support FFA and anybody else that comes by that would like to. I have a small trailer that I use for hauling a. It's just flat. Has a ramp on the back. It's 5 by 8, and I was thinking about building a little farm store shed. The window that's up in the front, kids could be inside, and there would be a shelf for displaying items. I've talked to Buck Johnson. That they have plenty of produce in the wintertime that would be perfect to sell. It would be an activity after school, would be an activity and raising money.
Would he be donating the produce? Would he be donating? the
I
produce?
believe it's gonna be that arrangement, yeah. He might just be able to give us some.
He's the CTE teacher for our.
Right.
Horticulture class, so our
Oh.
students grow that produce.
He's a, you see,
This is why Bill, Kelly and I scheduled the meeting with you for Monday at noon to discuss this.
right.
Yeah.
Just make it sweet. But you can see once.
Yeah.
To start that. And we also would like to, some of the students need to build some chicken tractors. I think eggs, fresh eggs would be a good thing to sell. Flowers. Anyhow, looking at it, probably about. I need about $1,000 to get one. There it is.
Well, I venture to say, that Bill is very well connected. At least from, what small slice of agricultural life that I know him in. But, so it bodes well. The future is bright.
One thing, one question I had is our school a 501(c)(3)?
It is.
We can take donations.
And like I said, we could talk about this, and that's why I asked for you and
That's
Kathy to meet on Monday, so that we can go
Okay.
through all this.
I appreciate it.
Mhm, mhm.
And, nice meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you so
Let me see if
much. Welcome,
I
yeah,
got the names here to help me, so it's real
Yeah.
clear. Hi,
yeah.
nice to
How are
meet you. And this is Brian.
Yeah, it's me here.
Thank you.
And you know where I am.
Okay, nice to
Yep.
see you, Bill. See you. On Monday. Be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
Thank
That-
you.
Both of you on Wednesday.
Yeah. See
I'm Kelly. I'll be moving
you.
over.
See your name on things.
Yeah,
Of course, Linda.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
See you
Well,
later.
Sounds like he has some, good plans, a
Yeah.
vision.
Hi, Melissa, welcome.
Oh, there she is.
Did you guys
Hi,
get my text messages?
We sure did.
glad
Sorry
to
about
see you.
Yeah, hope your car's okay.
For now, yeah.
For now.
Moving on to action items. 4.1 is review of vendor services policy, first reading.
Okay. We have a lot of policies coming up here. This first one, so the first thing in the packet is the draft, it says draft, and then the second one is how the policy is as of now. And you'll notice one of the main changes is the word tutoring. We don't really know why this policy had that in the title, because tutors aren't the same as vendors.
Right.
Tutors are our own employees.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to take that out of there. And then we, just, you know, kind of reworked the vendor policy a little bit, not a ton, you know, but just made it match what our practices have been. So we put it as a first reading just because it, you know, it was some significant changes. I mean, just the way that it was reworded is quite a bit different. And I guess that's it. We'll move on to the next policy after that, but anyway, so since this is just a first reading, it's just an opportunity for you guys to see it, for it to be out in the public, that we're gonna, you know, be looking at changing this policy, but no action needs to be taken. But with that said, if anybody saw anything in there that you had any questions about, or any edits or anything that you wanted to let us know about now. But you can see this again next month as an actual action item to adopt that.
Are there any questions or comments for Sherry?
I kind of was wondering a little bit about our vendor service policy. I'm glad that it's coming up. I feel like I don't know if it doesn't feel like very thorough. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of brief and vague. I feel I'm thinking that, like, just the outside vendors, like what is our procedure on when we're allowed to accept and not accept those. Like, one example is, I was approached by a musician who like does multiple avenues with different schools of giving private lessons, group lessons, things like that. And he was like, I would love to be a part of the vendor services for your guys' school. And I was like, that would be great, because in this community that we have, there's like 5 or 6 children that are enrolled with our school. So that would be a great way, since I know these families would like to get music lessons. And then I was given feedback that that was not something we were doing, that we're not accepting vendors at this time because of budget and stuff. So I just feel like the way that this makes it sound is like, well, as long as they're pre-approved, they have a background check, everybody gets 1 per semester if it's not something that they can get from the school for various reasons. What are those reasons? You know, it's just missing a lot, I feel like. And it's a little, maybe even in that case, like potentially misleading, you know, like we could be doing a lot more with what this says, but we're not able to for reasons that are not spoken, you know?
Yeah, like not saying when budget allows or something
We
in
could
here.
add that language to it.
Right, or like, for instance, if you brought on a vendor and they were pre-approved, but budget wasn't allowing us to support our students in that way, like who are our vendors that we are allowing on? Because it's not like we're automatically paying someone just by getting them fingerprinted and into our options, you know what I mean? So it's like, this basically says to me, yeah, that musician would be able to hop on, get fingerprinted, and then if budget allowed, they'd be able to service our students. But like, that wasn't able to happen. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's,
Sort of, I mean, I get your point. And I guess it's just my, being an old timer, around these kinds of policies, that, it's, and I appreciate a fresh set of eyes looking at this, thinking, out of the box. But with the way I look at it is with a lot of these policies, it's assumed for me that it's especially with the vendor services, which is enrichment to extracurricular activities,
Well, I
things like
believe
that.
that we agreed that
it's-
vendors are not
it's-
extracurricular,
That
correct?
it's, I mean, that may not be the best word, but those things are all dependent upon the budget. So
Would you say it would be assumed that they're already a vendor in the step policy? Is that what you're trying to say? It's like it's assumed that it's not people who are trying to become vendors, but they're already vendors and you have that a policy in place.
well, no, I mean, this covers using Melissa's example, a musician, you know, and that fits under the music enrichment. And that's wonderful, you know, if they go through all the steps to that are outlined, you know, that's fine, but that's not an automatic. Because if it's not budgeted, then you know, it can't happen.
But would that be a part of the policy though? Would that be under a policy though, if it's under a budget thing? Because I mean, a policy would think like if you're, like retail center has a bunch of vendors, they have policies for that. But I wouldn't think they would put in the language per se of the budget, like it's depending on the budget.
Well, I think that's what Jerry is saying, that
Yeah.
it's kind of, it goes without saying
Yeah.
that you would only do anything
Yeah.
if there was money to do
Right,
anything.
right. I would
So
think that'd be
I think
assumed.
that was, yeah, but,
And I think, Melissa is looking at this from a standpoint of, board member, parent, that type of thing. And we're looking at it as coming to the table with this, as a background. And so we know everything is budget driven.
but looking at this through the eyes of a parent wouldn't.
Would not,
Right.
would not necessarily know that, oh gosh, I've done all of this and still nothing.
Right.
And so maybe a sentence could be added, because as we've said before, we're not the only ones that look at this, and we're not always gonna be at the table.
Yeah,
And so we've always tried to spell things out.
Right.
Am I making sense? Is that
Yeah.
what you're thinking, Melissa?
Yeah, I just think that just as clear as we could be on our processes, like from start to finish of like anything that comes with supporting like the students and what they need, and the communication between people who look at this and say like, well, I just don't understand, or, you know, well, what is the process, or how do we go about figuring out if that's appropriate? You know, it's just, I think that any way that we can really have everything spelled out, like you were saying, is just probably the best way to go about it. And obviously, everything is budget according to the budgets, but you know, it's just the way it says things like students may only utilize one vending per class per semester, you know, if budget allows, or something like that, because it sounds like, well, you know, well, I can't get music in class, just using it as an example because it was recent. Like, then why am I not able to use that as the one thing that I get? Well, budget, you know, okay, that makes sense. But like, well, why are they not allowed to be a vendor? You know, why are they not allowed to get fingerprinted and be on board just in case budget allows? You know, stuff like that. So like, for instance, in that situation, this person could become a vendor according to this, but just budget doesn't allow to send students their way. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what is it that would stop us from there? So I just feel like there's things missing, there's gaps, just little, yeah. So I don't know, obviously this is just first reading, but I just wanted to make that just
Melissa,
spoken.
do you, think that maybe you could, I don't know, like maybe email me some of the things that you think should be in there? Like totally, I think we've already discussed, like if budget allows or whatever
Yeah.
piece. But, and just so you know, this is a policy and not supposed to be a process. We actually already have a procedure, a process for when somebody comes on as a vendor. When we give a vendor packet out, they're given a letter of all the things they have to do. The teachers have an instruction sheet about like how to bring on a vendor and like when a vendor is needed. That's all procedural. And so this is just a policy. And so it's not going to spell out like all of the internal process of what happens. But maybe if there are things in here that, you know, should be added or that you think should be added, you know, you could let me know.
Maybe if can you send me or like link to me where that can be found so that I can kind of see like what, because if this is what people are seeing first, then they need to know if they can or can't take the step to that, right? Like until.
Really, a policy is, for example, I mean, this is going to be a terrible example probably, but if we were sued by somebody and, you know, it kind of came down to like the judge wanted to know, well, what is your policy on that? This would be the policy that would cover us. Like, this is, you know, this is the policy we were following. This isn't really something that like would be, I don't know. I don't know. I guess
Step by step,
yeah, it's not a step-by-step thing. It's more just like
an overview or something.
well,
Or-
the other reason why I think you would have a vendor service policy is because we have to remember that we are dealing with taxpayer dollars. And there are very strict laws that govern how we can spend those dollars. And we are not allowed to give any gifts of public funds. So paying for a kid's dance classes could be considered a gift of public funds. That's not something that traditional site-based schools use their budget for. You can't buy kids Disneyland tickets. You can't buy, you know, there are things you're not allowed to do. And that as a credentialed teacher, especially an elementary teacher, you're actually, as the teacher, credentialed to be teaching music things, art things, but actually teaching violin or something is not something that is required by schools. That would be like a bonus kind of thing. And so having a policy in place that says, if for whatever reason the school isn't able to do something that we are required to do, we could utilize an outside vendor for. That covers us from being, you know, somebody saying that we're like giving a gift of public funds.
Right.
So having these policies in place are kind of to cover us for things like that.
That makes a lot more sense to me. So then in that case, and even adding this, like in that circumstance, like you guys were mentioning earlier, that it goes without saying that everything is according to budget. But I do think it still may be beneficial if we did, that students may only utilize one vending class per semester for either visual or performing arts or life skills, when budget allows or something like that. So I think that I'm gonna look at this again for any other little things with that, what you just said in mind more. But I think that might be beneficial just for public comprehension. Doesn't mean, because I know it says may, and may always means, you know, or may not, but you know, just to give people a little bit better of an understanding, maybe.
Well, you know, appropriate place to add that caveat that we're talking about is outside vendors will only be used when the service that is being provided is not a service that Northern United Charter Schools can provide, and budget allows. in that, so that, then it would, you know.
Well, I guess
That
thinking
would
about
be
that
clear enough and
statement.
send a clear message to anybody, reading this and any other of our policies to begin to get this message through to the general public that things are dependent upon the budget, what is budgeted for. It's not that we're against it, but, it's what we set aside money for to be able to provide.
So with that statement, actually, I was just reading that along with you. And does that kind of mean like, well, number one, the obvious is that we cannot use it for anything that we can provide. But number
Correct.
two would be that we must use it for things we cannot provide. So like the budget has to make room when we cannot provide it. Is that almost like does that make sense too? Like, I'm just, because
If a student needs something, if there's something that, for whatever reason, we can't provide, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think if, I don't even know what that could be, but like, let's just say, I'm thinking a high school student, because any elementary student, the teacher, a multiple subject credential teacher can provide every single thing a student needs. So thinking about a high school student, for example, let's say we have a teacher who is the teacher for a high school student, and that teacher doesn't know how to, do, exactly, calculus or something.
second language.
Right. Well, we need to provide some sort of way for that student to get that. And so it might be that we are, purchasing an online curriculum for them to do it. It might be that we pay for them to go to College of the Siskiyous to take that class. If, these are the kinds of things that we would have to do. So to your point, yes, if it's something that we're having to provide, we have to pay for it. That's just, we can't say we can't afford to do PE. PE is required.
So in that case, then putting in that budget statement doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't. Yeah, it really doesn't. Because if it's something with that sentence before them, if it's something we have to provide, we don't get the choice.
Right.
Things we can choose to not pay for is we don't have to have aides in classrooms, but we have to have that teacher in the classroom. We don't have to.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to offer karate, but we have to cover the PE standards.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, the teacher needs to be able to teach music, but they don't have to do clarinet,
Right.
they can do something else with xylophones to teach.
Or music could
concepts.
be supported through an art class instead, or something like, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
So
now
that's what
I
these
do
are.
understand, I apologize not really understanding like what policies are versus protocol.
Well, that's okay. And I think that it's helpful to talk these things aloud. I mean, it takes me a second to think about these things, but yeah, I mean, it really is, these outside vendors are only when it's something we're not able to offer. It's not supposed to be like, sometimes I'll have a teacher say, oh, but this family couldn't afford it if we didn't do it. Well, I mean, that's true, but that's not really our obligation. I mean,
Right.
yeah, it would be great to offer horseback riding lessons to every kid, but that's not really what public schools are charged with doing, and we have limited resources and we have to follow the ed code. So that's what I think people sometimes don't realize. And I have to tell you, one of the main reasons we kind of updated this policy right now is because there are a lot of issues in the state with charter schools like ours doing these kinds of things that we're not supposed to be doing. Truly, the example I gave of buying Disneyland tickets is a real example. That actually has happened. And so because of that, there is potential legislation that could be coming forward. So we have all been told, you better make sure that you're following these processes and following these ed codes very closely. And so that's why I pulled out this policy to take a look at it again.
Well, good. And so then do you think that like the e.g. swim lessons, music lessons, specialized physical fitness programs like karate, dance, etc., like having that is like you were saying to connect that those are, for instance, physical education related for those purposes, and that this is suffice to make that clear?
Yeah, maybe it's not.
Good about
Maybe
it?
it's not clear enough. Maybe that's what needs to be added. And that's kind of the purpose of that. I think it's someplace, in the first paragraph where it talks about the vendor is needed to meet state standards. But maybe that's not spelled out in the
And where does it say that? Will you?
sentence of the first paragraph?
State standard.
You know, that's kind of the purpose of these vendors. It is helping students meet state standards when, for whatever reason, we're not able to. And so
Right.
maybe that's not clear enough. And we did try to wordsmith that a few times to try to make sure that made sense, but it sounds like we need to work on that a little more.
And when you say state standards, should we also add per ed code, or I'm just Johnny off the street, and what do you mean, state standards of what?
Like educational requirements or
content standards.
Mhm.
Yeah, California's content standards or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Of where we're getting
Yeah.
this.
Right, more
yeah.
specific.
Yeah, okay, I like this. This is helpful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll see it again next time as a first reading again, which is fine.
Which is fine. Okay.
But so, yeah,
I'm
Melissa, seriously, if you think of
rounded
anything
about.
else. Yeah, if you think of anything else, let me know.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, we will move on then to, we're going back, as Sherry said, we're not taking any action on this because it was a first reading, and we will revisit it again next month. Again, as a first reading or a true action item. 4.2 is review of the curriculum and instructional materials policy, first reading.
Again, we did this as a first reading because we felt like there were a lot of changes and wanted to give plenty of time for people to see those. And so the first page is the draft. It says that at the top, and then the next section was what the policy had been. And we cut it down quite a bit, went from 3 pages to 1 page. And one of the main things that we did a couple big things here, but one of the main things we did was take out all of the examples that were in there of things that are acceptable and things that aren't acceptable. Those were a lot of like bullet pointed, like these things are not acceptable, furniture, ready-made clothes, there's like all these lists of things that weren't acceptable in more than one place. Poison, knives, bows and arrows, where so we just were able to kind of reword all of those things so that we can kind of condense a lot of that. But the other big thing that we wanted to change brings us right back to what I just talked about, the idea of using taxpayer dollars responsibly. And we felt like the way that it had been worded was a little more old school, what we're trying to kind of get away from, the idea that, because this is how it used to be in the old days with Mattoll and how some charter schools still do, that parents have instructional funds. And that's the way that it used to be. And schools still to this day give a dollar amount to a student, to a family when they enroll. You get to spend this much money, and they're handed catalogs to just go through and order. But that is not what's supposed to be happening. What's supposed to be happening is a teacher is giving a student assignments and determining what a family would need at home to be able to complete those assignments. Oh, you're going to need glue sticks for this, so we're going to order glue sticks. And so the way that this had been written, like it was even called an instructional funds policy, as if families had these instructional funds. And so we just wanted to be sure that we were being very clear about, we're providing the supplies and the things that are needed for the students to, get their core academics and, meet the state standards and those kinds of things. So that was, just so you know, that was the rationale behind updating this. So I don't know if now that you know this, because again, it's a first reading, if you wanted to look at it again with fresh eyes, and then if you think of anything between now and next month, let me know, because this will be coming back to you again too. And the idea that these things that the school is purchasing are owned by the school. Now, obviously consumables are going to be used up, but other things, they're supposed to come back. It's not a game or a puzzle that stays at home, and we just wanted to really clarify that.
Now, along with the supplies, do we, and I know some schools have done this, if there's a special project or whatever, will we continue to send home a list to the
We've
families?
never done that.
Some
That's
schools
the thing.
have.
All schools do.
Yeah.
I think we're the only school that, and I don't know why we've never done that, but that is something that we have been encouraging teachers to do. You can always ask for people to volunteer.
To volunteer.
Kids actually like to pick out supplies, school supplies. It's kind of fun. They don't have to, they're not required to, but there's no reason not to ask. You can, these are the things that we're looking for, and teachers can send home things that people wanted to donate, never required. But anyway, that's something that we are encouraging people to do.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Melissa?
I think it's so much more, it makes so much more sense than the previous. Like it's, like you were mentioning with calling it funds as if it was like there for them, like they could use up to whatever amount. It's just so much more comprehensible now. And I just think it's a great direction, because just being able to have more organization on what we're purchasing and reusing is great. And so I had one editorial comment, and then one just, I guess, like, is this necessary or not? So the editorial comment is in, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth paragraph, I guess you'd call it. All non-consumable materials must be returned to Northern United Charter Schools at the end of the school year, or when a student is no longer enrolled in the school for reuse. I think that for reuse is misplaced, and it might be better somewhere along the lines of all non-consumable materials must be returned to Northern United Charter School for reuse at the end of the school year, or when a student is no longer enrolled in the school. Something like that, because when I read it, I'm like, when the student is no longer enrolled in the school for reuse.
Yeah. Yeah, good job. Thank you. We will definitely make that change.
Yeah, and we have that.
That's like a dangling participle or something like that.
And then the only other thing I was wondering is the last one before the bold, any additional instructional materials approved and purchased must be represented in the learning log. Is it appropriate to say something like any additional materials approved, I don't know what you would call it, lent or purchased, like, because the lent stuff, like the things that have been purchased prior, shouldn't that be also represented in the learning log, like that you lent out these books because they're still property of, even though they're not freshly bought in? Like, I don't know if that's missing or if it's unnecessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Maybe it should just be any additional instructional materials utilized must be represented in the learning record.
Yeah,
it's just that, I think we were just wanting to say the things that the school is buying, because sometimes families have their own stuff. Like, there's no requirement that be in the learning record.
Right.
So we could, maybe we say checked out or issued by the school or something.
Issued by, that seems
Yeah.
good. Approved and purchased, issued by,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Okay,
When you
Well,
are going
any
through,
additional, any and all, utilized. You wanna make the sentence.
Well,
Nice.
and my suggestion, when you're going through and you're doing this, can you underline, put it in red, something so that, we know that that was,
between that,
addressed?
before next,
Mhm,
Yeah.
okay,
mhm.
What was corrected, added, deleted.
okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? And, as with the, vendor services, this may come back again as a first reading or a true action item. So moving on to 4.3, approval of the NUCS independent study policy.
Okay, so this one is not a first reading, even though there are some, significant changes, but the reason it's not a first reading, why I'm asking for action now, if you guys find edits, we can bring it back again. But by law, we have to have our independent study policy approved prior to being able to enroll anyone in independent study. So this has to be done before school starts. So that's why we can't just do it, not approve it now. And what happened is, well, every year, you guys know, every year on this month, we bring the independent study policy to you, even if there's no changes, because that is required. But this year there were changes. And that's because I think I said in the background sheet, some independent study ed code was changed at the end when the trailer bill was adopted. And so because of that, it required us to update our independent study policy to get in line with the new laws. And so this one was done by our attorneys. When that happens, we have our attorneys do it. Plus, this is a big one. I mean, if our independent study policy was not correct, then our ADA would be kicked out by the auditors when we get audited. So that's why this one is not a first reading, and I'm asking for it to be approved now. But I don't know, the major changes, you probably looked through them both, but the biggest change has to do with how teachers are determining attendance of independent study. So they allowed for, the new changes allow for teachers to now use time that students are actually working on something like in person or like on the synchronous instruction or something like that for attendance purposes. Where before it was strictly like the work product, now it doesn't have to be just the work product. It could actually be time as well. So let's say a student Zooms in to a class with a teacher, but they don't actually do any writing during that. There's not a work product that's produced, but the teacher is working with the student that whole time. We now can count that. We couldn't before.
that's awesome.
Just like before, we have our centers. A kid could come, be there all day, but do nothing and not get any attendance. Now they can if they are engaging in the conversations and those kinds of things, but it doesn't have to be just the work product now. That was the biggest change in the law. One of the other changes is that, okay, if a student is doing something, say on APEX, which, I know a lot of you guys know that is an online curriculum that a lot of our high school students use, and they're doing work in there. Before, they had to actually have work products. So there's things in there that they're reading, and then they're answering questions and things. There had to be like some sort of work product that came out of that. Now, the fact that there is a date and time stamp that the student logs in and is in there, that now can be counted as well. So those are the major changes that impact us. There were a lot of other changes to independent study, like Rosemary and Jerry, you'll be interested to hear this. The other thing they changed is now there's no, for short-term independent study like that districts do, there's no minimum days now. You could do independent study for 1 day now.
Whoa.
See, they used to have that.
Well, now
and
they've gone
then
back.
they,
Yeah,
also changed when you can sign your last year.
Exactly.
That was
Yes.
long ago.
School year instead of.
beforehand, I know, but not for us. Long-term, it's still before school starts, but short-term, it'd be any
So it's short
Yeah.
term, it's only short term, so it's like if
under
someone
16 days.
can't come to school tomorrow because they had a family member that died.
Yeah.
And so obviously you wouldn't be able to get a signature
No.
from them to be able to
Yeah.
put them on independent
Yeah.
study, but you know, they might be gone for 2, 3,
Yeah.
4 days.
Uh-huh.
You can have them sign it and then come back.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
like-
Well, that's was,
Now you can let them
that's fair.
sign that anytime for school.
Yeah.
But that doesn't impact us, because
No.
that's short-term.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does that amount to hours? I know you have to have a certain amount of student hours. What does that amount to hours
Yes, so
like?
for
Just curious.
study schools like us, there's no daily instructional minute requirement like there is at site-based schools.
Oh.
We do have a yearly minute requirement, but not a daily.
Oh,
So
interesting.
what, the way that it's worded in independent study law is that we're supposed to be assigning the work that would be equivalent to what a student would have in a site-based program, and it's all based on what the teacher judges that work product to be, the time that that would be for.
Interesting.
are there any questions or comments?
So like I said, this one I'm asking for approval on.
Okay.
All right. Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the NUCS on independent study policy.
And a
I'll
second?
second.
All those in favor? Melissa,
Aye.
Jerry,
I,
Brian?
Aye.
And I also approve, motion carries. Moving on to 4.4, approval of NUCS Title IX policy prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sex.
Okay. So this one, the next two policies actually both also same reason, rationale for not being a first reading. Laws changed and these have to be in place. In fact, this Title IX one was supposed to be in place by August 1st, but we didn't have a board meeting, but so anyway, that's why these are not first readings. And also, I'm kind of lumping these two together because previously we had one policy that covered all of this, and that's what's in here. Like the first thing is the draft, new one of the Title IX, then what our current policy is, and then the next one is the harassment one. And I didn't include our current Title IX one in there again because it was exactly the same. So in other words, 4.5 and 4.4 and 4.5 currently are one policy, but they're being broken up into two now.
Oh.
So, and the reason for that is because Title IX law changed. And because there were extensive changes, our attorneys felt like the policy should now be broken apart. So now we have two separate policies in here, replacing one. So this first one is the Title IX policy. And like I said, Title IX law changed. And basically they have spelled out some more things that we have to keep into consideration to not discriminate against. So really spelling out a lot of like gender identity kinds of things. And also it changed some of the requirements for training that has to happen, just a variety of things that changed with Title IX law. And you may have heard some things on the news about it. There's some lawsuits regarding this happening, but they do not affect us as of right now. So anyway, this first one was, they both were rewritten. This policy was rewritten into the two by our attorneys. And again, I'm asking for them to be adopted now so that they could be in place. The second policy, the harassment one, which I know we're not to yet, but that one, there really wasn't a lot of changes to it other than the fact that they were pulled apart into two policies. But there wasn't a law change or anything related to a lot of that kind of, the stuff that's in that one that really necessitated a lot of changes. So anyway, I don't know, does anybody have any questions? I have a lot.
Any questions or comments for Sherry? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve the Northern United Charter School Title IX policy prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sex.
And a second?
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Melissa,
Aye.
Jerry,
I,
Brian,
Aye.
and I also agree, motion carries. Moving on to 4.5, approval of the NUCS harassment, intimidation, discrimination, and bullying policy.
I know, this is all a lot of a big mouthful. Again, this was part of the original policy that has been pulled out. It's one that the attorneys wrote based on what is, required, what schools are required to do. Really, the only things that we fill in are like, who's gonna be investigating it, kind of thing, which for the most part is me. I think in there for appeals, it's the board.
you know what, first thing came to my mind, in seeing the separation of these two, and then this one standalone was, oh, it kind of coincides with one of our required vector training.
Yeah, it does.
policies that we
That's
have.
true.
Which,
Uh-huh.
so, and I'm not criticizing that, it's just
Yeah.
that, we have to remain forever diligent
Yeah.
on understanding what harassment is.
Yes.
And what forms it can come in, same thing with intimidation, discrimination, bullying, so that we're all aware and nothing slips by
Yeah.
that comes back to haunt us.
Well, and this all happened so quickly that, speaking of vector, because we do a Title IX vector training, they don't have them updated yet for the new, and so that's something that we're not able to assign to our staff that we normally do right now because it's not ready to go. But yet we were supposed to have everybody trained by August 1st. So at the fall summit, I'm gonna do something, some sort of training. And hope that Vector comes out with something soon.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve the Northern United Charter School harassment, intimidation, discrimination, and bullying policy.
And a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, Melissa,
Aye.
Jerry,
I,
Brian?
Aye.
And I also agree, motion carries. Moving on to discussion items. 5.1, 2024-25 annual goals.
Okay, so every year in August, I present you with goals and then we adopt them in September. So right now, this is just to start the discussion. I listed what the Humboldt LCAP goals were, what the Siskiyou LCAP goals are for this current year. And then I also included what our annual goals were last year.
I like that.
You appreciate
I
having
did.
that on there? Okay, good. So this is just a discussion for, us to decide what we wanted to do for this year. We could keep the same goals that we had in 23-24, or we could, which you guys might remember, they were really kind of a morphing of the Humboldt and Siskiyou LCAP goals. So we could keep those same goals, or we could address new ones. We could have, I don't know, it's whatever option you guys think. And we don't have to make any decisions today, but we can at least talk about it. Yes,
Any questions or comments for Sherry?
Sherry, do you feel like these goals from last year are still relevant and encompassing a vision? Like, how do you guys feel, like faculty and you, about like what your guys' plans this year? Is there anything different and new that maybe might need to be reflected in our goals?
No, in fact, I feel like, I do feel like these goals still reflect what our plans are, like, you know, I just can't imagine us not having an academic goal, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here, and so that's the first one. The second one is more like social emotional well-being and, like having a positive environment and those kinds of things. That also seems like something that is definitely on the forefront of what our staff works on. And then that third one really seems pertinent with the fact that we've both become community schools and are doing CEI again, Community Engagement Initiative, for the second year. And so if anything, I think we are even more focused on that this upcoming year because, you know, having gone through CEI last year, we just are ready to kind of get rolling now with more community engagement things. So to me, the goals that we had last year absolutely still are very relevant.
I had a question. Okay, so we had some people, and this might go with this, come to our Rotary Club. You guys have some kind of program that actually empowerment group here, right? Am I correct? You have an empowerment group that says, has our name on here.
We do hear the live, yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
so Althea, I guess, was working with these people from what these people were saying. And I'd asked them, what's the difference between an empowerment group only site or a wellness center? And I was asking, well, how come we don't have a wellness center here? And they said something that we didn't have the budget.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
$50,000 to do.
So that's why I'll say that's something that, you know, if you're able to do in the future, because I know I've heard so many good things about a wellness center, and they said that you get more out of that than just an empowerment group, because you're talking about, you know, overall, you know, social and emotional well-being. That's something to look at in the future. Doesn't have to be now.
That's
That's
something
what
we
we can
decided
do.
against. We brought them in last year
Yes.
to do some things, and that really wasn't a good fit for some of our families.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed that they came to our, gave a good presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're utilizing them in some ways. They have a whole menu of things that they offer, you know,
Okay.
that they sell, provide. And so we've gone through and picked the things that are most relevant for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just gave us a presentation and said, oh.
Yeah,
'Cause I mean, at some point, if you don't use them, maybe to have some,
they
eventually
were
some
great
kind
with
of,
the high school students.
with the
high school
some kind of
students.
wellness, you know, if we're talking about things like that.
Mhm.
That's all, my only comment.
You talk here about improving school climate, and I know that's been a goal the last couple of years.
Mhm.
Do you think that we have reached a plateau or the top of the mountain or whatever on being positive, having a safe environment for our students, things like that?
No,
Okay.
I don't think we could ever, you know, there's always gonna be students who don't feel engaged. I think we have to
That's
keep on
right.
trying to reach them
Mhm.
and, you know,
Nothing stays that.
I think Melissa brought up a really good point that stuck with me last year. I don't even remember what the context was, Melissa, but I actually think you kind of pointed out that something like for all being in something, and the idea of like, I think we need to keep striving for looking at all our different demographics and trying to do whatever we can to reach them. And so, you know, maybe we started with like the low hanging fruit, which is like engagement at the learning centers. That's always the easiest because they're there. It's a captive audience. We could do a lot of things. But what about those kids who aren't coming to our centers? What can we be doing for them? And
Right.
so I think there's a lot of room for improvement there.
And-
Also, I think that goes hand in hand with chronic absentee
Uh-huh.
and our attendance rate, and we're still not where we want to be there. So no, I don't think we're where we want to be yet. I think we, there just always is room for improvement.
Absolutely, good, good. And I know from attending after hours functions, so to speak, I can see, especially over here at the Cutton Learning Center, a lot of new faces, a lot of faces. And that's really positive. And hopefully that will transfer over to the Eureka Learning Center.
We have so many plans in place to try to increase that engagement. We just are putting through a big order of all kinds of stuff that we're using our CEI grant money for, that like to bring people in, like popcorn machines and mascot costumes and, like all kinds of things that we're gonna try to do to, keep that engagement up.
And no matter what, we are always gonna have the core people.
Right,
Consistently, K through 12,
Yeah.
we're gonna have the core people.
yeah.
So my input on it, I was gonna say thank you, Rosemary, for that clarification and asking about the plateau, because that actually helped me with a statement I was gonna say, which is like, I feel like in some of these areas we're really making some headway over the last few years, and I thought maybe at this point would be to like keep these and then think about what they're going to morph into the future. But now, having said that, like, there are so many avenues that we can pursue in each of these areas. I was going to say, one thing that I think we're in a way maybe doing away with, and we'll talk about it a little later, with the director's report being kind of a report on our goals, right, and how we're doing or what ways that we did it. I feel like maybe with that going away, it might be nice. I think it might have been nice all along to, prior to that, like the report on how did we do on the goals this year, or like what progress did we make, is maybe just like plans for what ways we're going to tackle these 3 goals each year, because that's what's kind of changing, right? And the goals I'm sure will change too, but like, okay, we're improving student performance outcome in all academic areas. Which ones are we focusing on this year? Like, or, and maybe just like have kind of a amping up, like, this is what we're going to achieve, or we're going to strive to achieve, and that way when we get that report back, we're like, yeah, we did it, or, oh, that didn't work out so good, but it morphed into this other thing, and we feel good about that, or, so I think that would be one way that we could maybe have a little better communication on what our goals really mean in the real world, like action.
Thank you.
Goals in and of themselves are meant to be broad and general. We can't list out all community and promote our schools within the broader community. So over the last several years, 2 years, and I may be wrong, I mean, go back beyond that, but there has been a significant rise in athletics and other extracurricular activities, one being FFA. And is there a way to, I don't think that comes out in that
Mhm.
third statement? And is there a way to reword that to draw attention to the fact that we have really grown in participation in athletics across the board? You know, there's cross country, and then there's track, then there's basketball, now we have FFA, and then soon it'll be speech with FFA, speech and debate, and participating in northern section activities. We have the poetry slam, science fair, probably other things that I'm missing, but I know from, and Rosemary knows, because we've been here since the inception, and we've seen these things slowly pop up year after year, and now it's becoming a constant, and there's more and more of it, and it's not just limited to Humboldt County, Siskiyou County, and that's a product of the reports that Rebecca and Kurt do that show us these, you know, different kinds of activities. And, you know, I think it'd be great for them to get acknowledgement or understand that, oh yeah, there was the ski trip, and then there was the what's the one the Bryceland one does? You
When
know,
they went down.
Right.
To the theme park,
yeah, and you know, so that,
tours, all the
yeah,
things.
all of that, and oh, absolutely, the Avid, all their, you know, trips, and that's just something that that's a big deal.
It is.
And
I
it's,
know.
and it's part of student enrichment, staff enrichment, community enrichment.
And all of those things play into these goals, right? I mean, if kids are engaged and doing things, then, you know, the hope is their academics will improve and the school climate will improve. I think that number 3 was really focusing on promoting the fact that, like, we do these things. Because I don't know about you guys, but I still meet people every single day that have never heard of our school. Every single day. And I don't know what to do about it, you know, we just keep on plugging away,
Right,
we're doing,
right.
you know, we advertise, we buy the school swag like that cup and the shirts and stuff, and we're in these different community events, but we just keep plugging away, and that's, I think, kind of what that third one was about, was like getting our name out and known, and, you know, getting our kids more and more out into the community so that people will hear about us and know about us. I think that's what that number 3 was mostly about, like the promotion part, I think, was the focus.
I
Right,
had an
and
experience.
And when that was originally written, many of the things that I just
We're
listed,
doing.
we
You're
weren't
right.
doing.
You're right.
So
You're right.
I just feel that, I don't know how we could somehow bring that into that statement. I mean, I get what you're saying, because that is part of it, you know, that recognition, but it's more than that.
I was gonna say, a few weeks ago, I was at Michael's. And I had a lady come up to me, and I was wearing my sweatshirt. And she just started asking all kinds of questions. She was a potential new family, had a high school student and whatnot. And she said to me, "Can I take a picture of that logo?" I have never had anybody say that to me before, but she wanted a picture of our logo off my back.
Well, a lot of times too, I think if you're talking about promotion, I think a lot of other schools, even I think my wife's, where she used to work, is doing more, I don't know if you would call them press releases or information out to the community, because you're not just serving this community of school, but you're also serving the greater community. So I would think if, an idea would be like contacting North Coast Journal, contacting like, these are our new board members, you might have us on the website, but you don't have a picture. Somebody from out there would not know who we were. It was things like that might promote the board, what we do. Doing some press releases, I think would help. I mean, I've seen other schools that do that and and what you do. Speaking at a Rotary meeting would help. I was gonna actually ask you about that because we have different school people that come and talk. Because if they don't know, and Althea's in my Rotary group,
Yes.
those things help a lot.
And piggybacking on what you're saying, Brian, when the sites are doing, bingo night or they're having their lasagna dinners and whatnot, do we ever put that out like, over the radio as a PSA or?
Not those kinds of things, no.
We do on Parent Square to like all of our people who are enrolled with that.
Yeah, just in our own internal,
Like
but
out to the public.
Okay.
what we do in like North Coast Journal and on the radio and that is just about our school, like enrolling in our school and what we offer. That's
Yeah.
what we put on,
Yeah.
like in North Coast Journal and Maverick Reunion and.
I just thought, of a great idea, a potential idea, Arts Alive.
Yeah.
And so, different student groups.
Yeah.
And then I immediately thought, dang, I'm gonna mention that to Bill.
Yeah.
And you can have the FFA there in their jackets, doing,
Mhm.
Yeah.
something and all those little things.
Yeah.
Help
Yeah.
draw attention and.
ELC's done Arts Alive before. They had a photography, the photography class had like a show.
Yeah,
I think they've done it a couple
Done
times.
bake
So we've done
Yeah.
bake sales there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
That's huge.
Well, any thoughts to wrap up on these goals?
Well, we had a good discussion.
Yes, we
I
did.
know.
Yes, we did.
Brainstorming, and I think that kind of goes back to like, I feel like these goals, like Sherry was saying, are gonna carry us for a long time. And I think like for instance, if last year in the beginning of the year, if we had heard or at some point, like one way we're gonna promote this year is we're gonna get some sports teams going. Cause I remember hearing that a lot, like our school now has jerseys. They're out there with other schools and schools are seeing us, and things like that. And so it's like at the end of the year, it's like, yeah, look how far we've gone with sports. And maybe this year, like, oh, one of the ways is social media. We might build up our social media presence so that like we're on Facebook in our local counties and things like that, and people could see us that way. I think that if our goals are not changing, I think it would be really cool to be able to see maybe at the beginning of the year, a couple ways that each goal is going to be implemented for that year coming. So that's kind of my takeaway from like hearing all of that. It's like super cool brainstorming, and I'm excited to see in which ways that we do grow in each of these goal areas.
As you're saying that, Melissa, it makes me think, I wonder if maybe we should restructure our school reports to have the 3 goals and then put the things under that goal that it's related to.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, just connecting it all so we could see the bigger picture and the
Like,
progress.
this is why we're doing this. Yeah.
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 Cool.
Because you remember what has always happened in the past is, August, we have this conversation, September, we adopt the goals. Then in October, I bring the plan to you guys. It's a written plan of what we're gonna do to address those goals. And then in April, I give an update about it. But that's what, like you said, is changing. And I think that has gotten kind of dry because I think that report that I give, the plan that I would always give you the month after we adopted the goals, always kind of it's kind of cookie cutter. It kind of looks the same, like, okay, how are you going to address academic performance? Well, we're going to do these assessments. We're going to do these intervention groups or whatever. But I think it brings it more to life in the school reports. Like seeing that, like, oh, these are the things that we're doing to address these goals. Because same with the LCAP is spelled out the actions. And then like, how did we do on them? That's exactly what the LCAP is, but it's so dry. You just don't see it in that same kind of like real world way.
I kind of even forgot that you do that, honestly.
I
And so I'm
know.
like, oh yeah, okay, so we do make a plan on how we're going to achieve these
Exactly,
goals.
but like I
Yeah.
said, I feel that was part of, you guys remember the conversation we had in my last like evaluation, like changing the tool, like this has just gotten kind of stale. And I don't think it's really promoting or showing what we want it to show. So this is, this actually kind of leads us into when we get down to 5.3.
Yeah, great.
Good. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on to 5.2, which is NUCS Board Self-Evaluation.
Take it away, lady.
I see.
Bathroom break.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, I can
take a
take
break.
two.
Don't you have to leave?
I won't have to leave until like 5 to 10.
Oh,
No, I'm.
I was hoping we could get you through.
Yeah.
But we've been talking.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like we're taking.
So I
a
do
quick-
think there was some
right.
confusion. I think there was some confusion that it sounds like to me that we were all gonna have them turned in today and then we were gonna discuss about it. Or am I wrong?
Sorry,
Me?
Melissa, she's talking.
So at 4 something, do we wanna?
Okay, at 5:23.
Okay.
We're taking a break. Melissa, come back to me.
Oh yeah.
Getting back to what Melissa was saying, she sent me her evaluation. By the way, thank you. It was very well done.
Very thorough.
Yes. But I was under the impression that we were going to each do our own and kind of have like a roundtable discussion about it. But I could be wrong. I have mine here. I don't know about anybody else, and I know Melissa has hers.
Linda and I had this conversation too, Melissa, about like when I was putting this packet together, I was like, do you remember exactly what was said? I was under the impression everybody was gonna do it on their own like you did. I didn't remember that it was gonna be sent to Rosemary. I just thought they were gonna bring their completed one here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just did that because that's what we're used to with your evaluation.
Yes.
I thought I better
Yeah.
do that. And also, I think you're right. I think we mentioned that we would all do it. We would have extra time to kind of think about it over the summer and come fresh. But I didn't remember that until you sent that email, actually, that we had all talked about that. But, and then one thing though,
Everybody brought their completed one. I think that's really all that's needed.
And if they have not, can we table it and bring it back next time?
So you could do whatever, whatever the board votes on, you can do.
Do you think that we should do that, Melissa?
Well, should you wanna see if people have theirs?
Yeah.
I think maybe we can all talk about what we want to do because we might be able to just look at it briefly together and just go over it kind of quickly, like, maybe, and then we could just, from there on, we'll just maybe even cultivate a deeper, like, well, how do we feel about this structure still? Does it feel good? Like, and how does it feel coming in from after summer and having this expectation of it being completed and prepared for first meeting?
Honestly, after looking through all the sample documents he provided in the packet, I think the one we adopted is to use.
For your guys' self-evaluation.
For me, I think, at least one of them that you provided, I thought was much better
than the one that we had done before.
Okay, at 5:27. At 5:27, we will reconvene, and I'd like to do, one thing before moving on to 5.3, because Brian has to leave, and that is to briefly talk about the Fall Summit. Jerry is going to be there representing the board with a little welcome. Thank you, Jerry. I'll be out of town. I would like to encourage Brian to attend for just a little introduction and to make his face known. And Melissa, if you were in our neck of the woods next Thursday, stop in as well. And with that being said, we will now officially move on to 5.3, which is, 5.2, which is the NUCS board self-evaluation. And as you may or may not recall, we had discussed this in the spring a couple of times, and we talked about at our very last meeting that this was going to be our homework for the summer, bring it back, and we could have a discussion about that. Melissa and I have ours done, and if you gentlemen have yours done, great. If not, we can still move forward if you guys want to do that, or we can table this until next meeting, giving Brianna more time to be with us and perhaps complete hers, and you gentlemen as well. So I'm open to hearing thoughts.
My thought was, because you were evaluating ourselves, I don't know if I can fully give input per se, because haven't been here a full year, and that's just being honest, because I feel like, well, I can't evaluate because I haven't been here a full year, let alone 6 months and all that. So I did look it over, I could say, hey, I could say we're doing good, or, but to be honest, it wouldn't be a fair assessment since I haven't been here a full year. That's my comment.
And that's a valid statement.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would say what you thought about the onboarding process and how you have felt as an individual board member participating in the board meeting between then and up till now.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't discount, even though you haven't been through,
right.
A year's worth or longer.
Because you've gone through things
Membership.
that we haven't, like the onboarding.
Right.
We haven't.
So, but I mean,
It was very thorough, I will say, very thorough.
everybody brings something unique to the table.
Yeah.
And onboarding has been forever identified as Jerry's baby. He took the lead on that right from the get-go, and
Oh, he did.
created.
I heard about it through him, that's all I knew.
Jerry, what are your thoughts about discussing now or tabling it and bringing it back next meeting?
Well, honestly, I mean, I'm prepared,
Okay,
but honestly, as I just mentioned to Sherry during the break, that in and amongst some of the documents she provided us for 5.3, honestly, I saw something that I liked way better than this one that we adopted, because I think it gets more to some of the meat and potatoes of interactions and.
See, I thought, looking at all of those, some of them were so lengthy and cumbersome that it got away from the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, right, any instrument, but there was one, I'd have to, scroll through and find it, that I thought dealt more with, interactions as, as a team, than do we need, the budget and.
Can I ask you a question, Gary? So are you suggesting that maybe like the board self-evaluation tool would be the same as the director's evaluation tool?
No, not, well.
Because you're saying in the ones.
There's bits and pieces that are gonna overlap and
Yeah,
be the same.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
Because what I gave you, the samples I gave you, that was for my evaluation.
right.
You know, but.
But no,
And so I just
really, in
think,
there,
as you're saying this, it makes me think like, oh, should we have the same?
no. Well, see, it says superintendent, but with, the performance standards, then it gets down to, human resources, 8, 9, labor union, So then, board self-evaluation.
Oh, that one, that I gave you the whole packet.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have that.
you gave, and then I thought, oh, there's some interesting things, but by the same token, just as you said to us in our discussion
Mhm.
about the instrument, was that you didn't feel like, you could offer, personal insights or comments, it was too formal. And I could, based upon what you sent us, I could say, yeah, this is kind of,
Yeah.
standard, boilerplate stuff, which any board worth its salt is going to, be, we're a very functional board. We're not a dysfunctional, functional board. And,
So you liked that CSBA board
that's,
self-evaluation
yeah,
tool? And
that's one of them, yeah.
I think that's the only one that was.
Is that, okay. So.
Yeah.
That's just my, but I'm prepared
You're
to,
prepared?
go through and discuss this.
And
Melissa?
Rosemary, yeah, I wanted to kind of retract. I was thinking that today would be good, but then realizing that we don't have Brianna, and also that we have limited time because Brian has to go, that maybe it would be better to just table it. But that's just my, because yeah, I think there's maybe a lot more things to think about too, like if we do like this model and yeah.
We could have a special board meeting where like between, before the next board meeting, that we do this and my evaluation tool, because it's gonna take a while, I
It is
think, to
gonna
hammer
take,
through
yeah.
those.
Yeah.
I think I
You
need
know
to,
why?
I think I'd like to hear a little about what you're thinking with the board evaluation or the director evaluation, but then maybe we do need a little more time to actually figure that out.
Mhm.
I agree.
They're both
What would be
big
great,
ticket items, so.
what would be great is another gathering.
Oh, wouldn't it?
That would be the ideal, because it's very low key and we're all together.
Yeah.
And
It's more conversational.
yes, and
Exactly.
that's what really, this is.
So
all
should we
about.
table it till October? Is that
No.
what we're thinking? When
When we're all together,
Mhm. I'd be good with that.
Brian, your
No,
thoughts?
I'm fine, yeah, if it's,
Okay.
especially if it's gonna be a long conversation.
And both of them
I think
are
they would be.
lengthy.
Yeah.
I do,
Okay,
I do.
Jerry, thoughts on a special board meeting or putting it with our October?
Well, if we wanted, if it's okay with everybody to wait till October.
The only thing I'll say is in my contract, we did put that we would have my tool figured out by the October board meeting.
And we
So,
probably will.
We would, yeah, I
Yes.
know, just by the skin of our teeth,
Okay.
put pressure on us.
Okay, so hearing that, let's revisit 5.2 and 5.3.
Also because.
Yeah.
Can we still hear a little about it from you today? Sherry, if you have anything to say about the director's evaluation, just to give us a little, kind of like how we just had that little overview of this. Like, do you have anything to say about that before we can table it and like move on?
Have a preference in what you want. Not like
I-
those.
Kind of like what Rosemary said about some of them, some of these tools seemed super long, like the freshwater one seemed. But partially it's because they did a different standard per page, like a performance standard, on each page. And then there were things in there that obviously didn't apply, like we're not gonna have
Labor.
yeah, exactly, any kind of like union negotiation kind of thing. It's funny because, obviously I reached out to different local superintendents and asked them for their copies. And everybody had different feedback when they gave it to me, like every Greek person said, mine is so lame, it's the same one I've been doing since you were here. Everybody had
Oh,
different
wow.
opinions of theirs. I feel like though the formats all looked different, essentially they were the same.
The same.
It was like looking at what is called the capsules, which is the California Administrators Performance Standards, something like that, which is basically it's the standards that administrators are evaluated on, just like the teachers. There's the California standards for the teaching profession. There's some for counselors or something. So pretty much all of these tools were addressing those, which is very different than what we had done in the past. And I wasn't really married to any of these. I just asked different, I asked a whole bunch of people and this is what I got back. Plus I did some like online searching. But these are basically like instruments where they're looking at like the standards for administrators and rating on them. And I guess that's kind of more of what I was leaning to, because that is just so different than what we had been doing. We really didn't have like a tool necessarily like that. It was more like me writing what I thought and you guys saying like kind of if you agreed on what I thought or something. And this is more kind of a tool or an instrument.
And I liked the 3 different choices as opposed to 5 or 7 choices, 1 through whatever. And you either did it, you did it, or you exceeded it.
Yeah.
1, 3, or 5.
Yeah, the way that those California administrators standards are, it's like emerging, progressing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like those
Yeah.
kinds of things, yeah. But yeah, I didn't have a strong opinion really either way on any of these. They really were just examples.
So do you feel like we'll take these and create our own format with the same type of tools that they did, or?
And that's kind of what I thought, is that we would look at these tools and like maybe not even pick any necessarily one, but like pick things that we liked out of different ones and make our own kind of Frankenstein piece something together that we liked. Because remember, Melissa, that's kind of what we ended up doing for this board evaluation. Like, remember, first we had a bunch of different examples and then talked about them. And then at some point, Melissa pointed out in our handbook that like the things the boards were supposed to do. And we're like, hey, maybe we just make an evaluation of that, I kind of just thought a conversation, a discussion, something organically would come out of it, but having some examples to look at to begin with helps.
Yeah. Do you think that we could, maybe each give you just like by email a little bit of feedback about areas that we feel are important or maybe not important or something, and then you could kind of come up with like something and then give back and we get feedback, so that way by the time we're ready to, we can just look at the completed with, you know, or do you think we need to do a lot of like sitting down and looking at each detail? And
I would be fine with that. You mean like if everybody went through and said, this is, I like this about this one, I don't like this about this one, I wish this one had this or whatever, and then I kind of create something, I would be fine with that, or I would be fine with, you know, just like having a meeting where we talk about it too. I'm up to whatever the board wants to do.
I like having the meeting and talking about it, because then once you sit in front of your computer and you do it, you're only doing it one time, maybe twice with some tweaking, as opposed to spending all the time.
And then it's thrown out and start over, like
Yeah.
more guidance,
Yeah.
clear guidance before I start drafting
Mhm.
something, yeah.
Or
Plus,
not.
the thing
Probably
that-
won't-
right then. Yeah, the other nice thing about the conversation is somebody saying something sparks other people to think of something too.
That's
you know?
right.
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's
but
why.
we want to table it until October because that's when we want to have it completed. I
I
think
know,
that's
but
kind
I
of
think
what
we just complete it during that. It's
During
not like,
that.
it doesn't, it's not something that has to be like voted on or anything, you know what I mean? And so if we just come to an agreement when we make it, you know, when we come up with it,
Uh-huh.
we could be typing it right then.
And it's not the formal evaluation, it's the tool
It's the
to
tool.
evaluate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just the tool.
Mhm.
Okay, that sounds good then to me.
See, like right now, all of this conversation and whatnot, we're
Yeah.
coming up with
Yeah.
the best fit for our group.
Okay, so the October board meeting, when we're
October.
all together,
When we
we'll
are
do
all
5-2
together.
and 5-3.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And we can talk about maybe other things like that.
And moving on to reports, we have 6.1, which is enrollment and attendance. 6.2, the fiscal report. 6.3, the 2022-23 teacher assignment monitoring outcomes, all of which are in our packets. But does anyone have any questions about any of those for Sherry or each other? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the director's report, 6.4.
Okay, well, needless to say, we are hitting the ground running, getting ready for school to start. There has been, as Rosemary pointed out, we will have our fall summit next week, and I just forwarded you guys an email that has all the information about that, where and when. Also, that's next Thursday and Friday. On Wednesday, we have our new employee orientation, and what happens there is all new employees come in the morning and hear a bunch of stuff that's pertinent to everybody, like if you're gonna be sick, your absence slip that you fill out, or timesheets, that kind of thing. And then in the afternoon, after that part's over, then it's all the teachers who need to learn the things about like doing the learning records and portfolios, so that's next Wednesday. There has been a flurry of new vehicle purchasing. In Siskiyou, we purchased a Honda Odyssey, which is a minivan, and a Honda Accord, a car. And we purchased those two with the remainder of our community school planning grant. We got that in just at the last minute.
From the Wairika dealership where
From
we
the
bought the
Wairika
others?
dealership, yes, we
Okay.
did. And then, so Siskiyou had the 4 vans that we originally purchased, now this minivan and this car. I went over there and drove one of the big original vans over here. Humboldt is going to lease it from Siskiyou. Siskiyou didn't need the full 4 full-size ones, so they have 3 full-size ones, the minivan and the car. And so now on this side, we have the one we're leasing from Siskiyou plus the 4 original, we have 5. And we've purchased also a Honda Odyssey and a Honda Accord, also from Wairika. And staff are gonna drive those 2 over at Fall Summit. I know, so we'll have those before school starts. We have so many classes now off-site, in particular at Eureka Learning Center. I mean, so many more partnerships with Humboldt County Office of Ed and with Alder Grove, a few partnership with them as well. for mostly CTE classes. So now we're having a introduction to like a programming, computer programming pathway that HCOE is doing, a health careers foundations class that HCOE is doing, a culinary pathway that we're doing at Jefferson Community Center. We still have the horticulture that's at Redwood Acres. We still have the building trades that's at Pacific View. And then we also have the ceramics lab in our facility in Arcata that Eureka kids are going to. So there's like 6 or more off-campus locations, and they can't use all the vans because other locations need to go on field trips and things like that. So we just needed more vehicles on the Humboldt side.
And I'm smiling, and I'm sure Jerry is too, listening to how we have evolved.
Yeah. So all of that vehicle stuff, and like I said, additional partnerships with HCOE and Alder Grove, Jefferson Community Center. And then, like I said, last week, I went over to Siskiyou and we had our welcome back breakfast that the county superintendent at Siskiyou County Office of Ed has every year for all the district superintendents and charter leaders and other administrators. So you guys remember over there that Kirk and Colleen now are going to be co-administrators. So Colleen went to her first meeting too, and Kirk went as well. The one for HCOE is coming up. We were paid in full by both districts in Siskiyou that owed us for, do you remember those in lieu of, yes?
Whoa.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
I know, got all
This is off
I
to
know.
a really good start.
Excellent.
I know, and so
Paid up
Kelly
too?
gave me, what?
Sorry, Hornbrook paid up too?
Hornberg paid us.
Wow.
So Kelly
It's a
informed me
miracle.
of one of them that was paid in full right before I went to that meeting. In fact, I think maybe she texted me maybe the morning of the meeting or the day before.
I wanted to thank you.
Yeah, so I was able to thank the superintendent for getting all caught up. And I saw the other superintendent that hadn't paid us yet, and he looked at me and, I don't know. Anyway, but they kept paying within days of that. So anyway, we're all paid up from both school districts, so
Good.
that's good.
Nice.
So that cash is now in our account.
Good, good, good.
And I think that's it for now.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Moving on to directors, or from directors to a 6.5 board report. I'm gonna go to Brian first because he's got to leave. Do you have anything to share?
I don't think I have anything to share. No, not that I know.
Okay, all right. Melissa,
No?
Jerry?
Well, I'd like to say, it's kind of like, oh, we got to get back into
Yes.
it.
The same thing, yeah.
Especially after the hectic summer I've had.
Pretty crazy.
But I think I'm looking forward to the coming year. We're off to a good start. We've got a full board right now, and looking forward to that coming get together in October. And I think it goes without saying, I'm really excited about the new FFA advisor, and the future really looks bright, and that's only just one area, and everything, it's just like, Rosemary, we've come such a long
Oh,
way. It's a really, really good feeling, really good feeling. And, kudos to everybody involved and responsible, and certainly to our director, Sherry.
Mhm. And in addition to everything that Jerry has said, I would like to welcome Amanda back at the Eureka Learning Center. She is an outstanding addition. The kids love her. She participates in everything. She's just an all-around good fit for us. Yeah. Also, I would like to ask that we as a board get site calendars of events and newsletters from the various sites again this year. That way, if we can visit or participate, we know where and when they're being held. We also have, which I think Jerry touched on this a little bit, we've received our emails from Vector for our mandated online trainings.
Yes.
And if you haven't received them yet, I believe there's 3 of them that are due in September. If you haven't received them, don't ignore the fact that they're coming, as I have. As Linda has told me, check your spam. They'll be sitting in your spam folder. But other than that, that's all that I have to say. Moving on to 7.1, our possible agenda items for our next meeting.
So the vendor services policy, curriculum instruction materials policy. Also, that's usually the board meeting that we do the MOU between Humboldt and Siskiyou. And maybe the van one too will be in that. Yeah.
Don't we have another policy that has to be done in September?
Homeless youth policy, yep. And that's about it. It's actually a fairly light month on the
And
board.
the survey of board members.
Yes, I have that on my, that too. Yes, asking all the board members whose term is up in December, if they're going to continue. And that will be Melissa and Jerry and Rosemary, I believe. Those are the 3. And so next month you'll be on the hot seat to let us know if you're going to continue another term or not.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on to 7.2, our next board meeting will be September the 11th. I'd like to thank everyone for
9/11.
coming. For coming today. I feel that we had a very productive meeting, a lot of good discussion and path for things to come. I will adjourn this meeting at 5:54.
Oh, Brian, so.
I know, right?